Okay, recording.
Alrighty then. So you both have seen one of my recent videos. It's entitled "In the Kingdom of God There Are Many Mansions." And so what I want to engage you with is to speak about that from your perspective. How do you see it? Do you see that we are dwelling in a whole myriad of potential dimensions? Because this is a very philosophical thing, and if straight-laced scientists, listen to this video, they'll go, "You're speaking absolute rubbish," because a dimension is this and a dimension is that. Well, when you get into the realms of philosophy, then of course we're dealing with a whole different variety of beasts. And so the reason why I made that video is because I've spoken obviously to many people in my life, trying to help them and looking at their minds as a psychoanalyst, and I'm seeing that they're stuck in a place. And the thing is, you see, what therapists want to do, the vast majority of the time, they want to take them out of that place, but it's like they're locked in a room. Now, Paul, you can say something about this. You've been in this room, and so what's it like? Can you tell us?
Yeah, it's, how can I put it? I would say that the actual reference point of the room always resides within me. And it's a case of, I know it's there, and I visit it at various times. And when you're in that space, it's almost like an empty house with no opportunity and no kind of perceivable kind of reference point of this reality for me, you know? Does that make any sense to you, what I'm saying?
Yeah, so when I was speaking, when I was in this medieval village here in Portugal, I made a sequence of videos asking, who am I? And I said that we have to be pretty careful when we delve into this level and depth, because you find yourself in a very curious place, which is like a void, and you cannot function in the matrix of your world. The last thing I wanted to do was think about where I'm going to move to, where I'm going to stay, how I'm going to get there, dealing with numbers and language.
It was very similar time to this time last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, and all I wanted to do was just to be in this space of not thinking, just drifting around, actually being. And so sometimes it can be conducive to your well-being. But you see, if people go into this space when they have families and vocations, then it's a very, very potentially compromising thing. Now, when you sometimes go into your room, Paul, do you go there by choice, or do you just find yourself you've just landed there somehow through certain circumstances and a particular state of mind that you're in?
Yeah, I think that's to do with it. It's almost kind of, what I find is the more likely time that I visit this kind of spaces are during the winter months, because as you know what it's like in the UK, everything's kind of, you know, you can see, if you look at like authors and things like that, you can see some very kind of dark stories comes out from England. If you look at a lot of the authors, you know how it goes. And you can't imagine somebody like Oliver Twist being created in Portugal, Aaron, can you?
No, that's right.
It's almost kind of like reflective of the perception of the level of vibration you're living at. So I would say a lot of it is to do with a lot of it is to do with the sunlight and things like that, without a doubt, because, you know, all we are is a solid formation and build-up of sunlight anyway, a photon. So when we're in that space, I can say it's always around February, March time it gets me. So I know it's every year kind of thing.
Yeah, so that's kind of like this SAD disorder, seasonal affective disorder, which comes about when the sun is in the lower hemisphere. And obviously this is very common in the northern European region. And so that's one space that can be kind of like some sort of a mild depression. But what I'm poking at here also is this space that you go in because of your near-death experience. Then you visited the other dimension, one of the other dimensions,
Sorry,
and you said it feels or felt so amazing. And coming back to this world, it just absolutely pales in comparison.
Yeah, what I can say, it feels like you're free from your body. You're free from your body. You're in like some kind of you remember it's a lot of years ago, but you just felt you was free from your body, and it's almost so fast. And then when I looked in front of me, it was like it was almost like a futuristic screen system that was rolling the information back to me. Was not of probably 1974, 75. It was almost like something like you'd say in another 200 years. You know, it wasn't. It wasn't definitely. It was so futuristic as well. That's what I can't get my head around, Aaron. Does that make sense?
So when you had your life review, when it flashed before you,
yeah,
it seemed very, very futuristic.
Exactly, because it was like I was in. It was like I was in the screen. Everything that was in front of me, as the information was firing back at me. It was like looking at if you look at a great big giant LCD screen nowadays. If you imagine something like that but bigger, that was replaying in front of you, but it was also in like 3D. Does that make sense? It was in a square panel. It was in a square panel. It wasn't in hyperspace. It wasn't like you were seeing anything behind it. It was definitely like a screen of some sort.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Yeah. No, I totally know what you mean with that. With my whatever astral projection I talked with you about, Aaron. With that, I had that too with this weird screen in front of me. I don't know how to say that. It's really like a monitor in front of you, but mine wasn't so big. I could still look around it. It was weird. But like you explained, in a way, it's 2D, but three-dimensional too. It's like a. I always call like
holographic,
like I always call that like visions. Like sometimes, last vision I had on the meditation years ago or something. But it's always like that. It's like you're in such a I don't know, maybe in a theta brainwave state that it's like you're not really conscious of your body, like you mentioned. You're almost weightless, or it feels like that, and it's like you having like an experience out of your body in a way. It's like you tap into different dimensions, like we talk now about the subject. It's really feels like that you're tapping into different dimensions or different. Yeah, different dimensions, I think, is the best way to explain it. And but still from this perspective, from where you're coming from, in a way, this dimension, you are still looking into another, let's say, wormhole or whatever, into another dimension, in a way, or parallel universe, holographic, whatever it is. But it in a way feels like that you're looking into something different from here.
Somebody would say, is it solid? But you're not solid in there, so this thing's not solid. Does that make any sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah. It's not.
Like, it's bizarre to try and explain. This is why people get all this confusion with when they go into these places on DMT and they say they see the jesters and things like that. Well, if they went up to the jester, they'd probably walk through the fucking jester. You know what I mean?
It's a projection. It's a projection. Or I don't know if it's a projection, but it can be. But again, like it feels like you looking into some kind of different dimension in a way. It's like a dream in a way.
So let me just interject this in there. What do you think to this? If we can't see them because they're in a different vibrational state, and they can see us only at times, and we can only see them at times. It states that they're as solid in their dimension as we're as solid in our dimension. But when we visit that dimension, we're not solid.
Yeah, like ghosts. I think I thought about that a lot. Like with ghost stories, like people see ghosts, and then it's like, maybe just like like you mentioned, like different frequencies, and then we can see them. It's like you have like see plasma or whatever it is, and see like faces and stuff, but it's not like they're not seeing you. All with shamans, it's not like that too. They're wearing these masks, and in a documentary they mentioned that too. If the shaman is let's say possessed by the spirit, And the reason why he wears the mask, because you shouldn't look him into the eyes when he is in that trance state. And one guy did that, a very Westerner, very scientific person, just said, fuck that. And I looked into the eyes of the shaman then in the ceremony. And even he said, for the rest of the day, and he couldn't sleep the whole night, the whole time he saw the face of the shaman, all the time if he closed his eyes, it's like, for him, like a very scientific person, it was so strange for him in the documentary. Like, why do I see all the time the face of that shaman? It's like, yeah, they're tapping into different dimensions, realities, frequencies, and other can, like, I think that's why we can see on psychedelics other forms of entities. It's like we are visiting their places and they can visit us too, but we have to be in certain frequency, vibrational states to receive that message. Every channeler says that, like, yeah, you have to be in a certain meditational place or a frequency to even receive messages from other, whatever, aliens or spirits or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like,
I think they're all around us. It's just a case of almost turning a dial, isn't it?
Yeah. What I want to do is I want to try to be practical, if we can. As
this is the thing about taking logic and practicality into this dimension. It fucking doesn't fit.
Well, it might do. Let's have a look at this. You see, I'm philosophizing about the varieties of dimension because, you see, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to reach people. I'm trying to give them a key to unlock the various mansions in the kingdom of God. Now, in my video, I am suggesting that the kingdom of God is a whole multitude of dimensions. Everything that is possible is within the kingdom of God. And what is possible is all these different frequencies, vibration, and levels of consciousness. And so when you have people who are stuck within their anxiety, they're stuck within negative thought patterns, they have some sort of a mind virus, how can we explain to these people the reality of it being possible to step outside of those mansions, because they're only frequencies, and if you increase the level of your vibration and positivity, then there's a potential that you can step outside of it. And then when you've experienced what it's like to reside in a higher vibration, when you find yourself slipping back into the lower one, you may have some tools to apply to stop you slipping back as deep as you have been before.
Kind of just bring this one. I've been Nicholas. If we bring this one in, if you imagine that each mansion is like a branch of the neurological pathway that we tune into, doesn't it state that the fact of the matter, if a person's been in a depression for like 10 years, that neurological pathway is tuning into the vibrational field around them that's very powerful. So when you just said, oh, if they can reach this new state of euphoria, or not so much euphoria, but a different way of seeing the world, which is more beautiful and more kind of with more clarity. Like you said, you've still got to wash and cleanse out that old neurological pathway, because it's almost like an haunting, isn't it? It will keep coming back, and because it's the most powerful aspect of the mind. What do you reckon to that?
Yeah, exactly. That what I wanted to say. It's like when a person is in depression, no matter what not no matter, but it's like Paul said, it's like it depends how long he is in that state. He creates this neurological pathway and this, let's say, thought loop, and feeds that all the time, gives that negative thought loop attention, and then it gets stronger. And like you can say to this person, of course, like after 5 years, yeah, do yoga, do meditation, eat well, all that stuff, and all that stuff helps. Go outside and all that stuff, but it takes time. You always have to say to these people, it takes time. You can't just override this pathway from one day to another. It's like you stop giving it attention, and then you create a new pathway and give that attention, like yoga, meditation, walking outside in the forest, or eating well, all this stuff, and giving new neurons, let's say, new pathways, creating these, and giving that attention. Of course, the old pathway will always come back for a period, because you fed that pathway for a time. It is strong in your mind still, so you can't change that from one day to another, even with practical advices. And sometimes even these practical advices make these depressed people even feel much worse than before, because when you say to them, yeah, just do this, do that and that, then they sometimes slip into the thinking like, oh, I'm doing this wrong, I'm doing that wrong, and then they again feeding that negative loop.
It is creating like an internal battle, isn't it? Like a chattering monkey in the mind.
Yeah. You have to be careful with practical advices. You can't force people, and it's not.
So can we say that the actual entity of depression is an entity?
It's a. You can call it an entity. I wouldn't call that an entity. It's like again, like a neurological pathway. You fed again. A negative thought loop. You give it attention, and then you feed it in a way. You make it stronger, and it's not an entity on its own. It's your own feeding it, your own attention.
Yeah, if you're an artist, Chris, and you kind of get a paintbrush and you represent your feelings on the art and the piece of paper. You create a demonic figure. That's a representation of your feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
So in retrospect, it's created like it is an entity, isn't it? Do you not think, really? It can be represented. What do you reckon, Aaron?
I think that mind viruses definitely are entities. And I think that when you get into a pattern which becomes addictive, then the energy... For instance, if you start on cocaine and it's great and you have a great time and you do it every weekend, and then you get involved with certain people and you start doing it 2 or 3 times a week, and then you start living with a cokehead, and then it's always there and you think, oh fuck it, and so I think that you can look at it as purely a cold scientific way, and you can say, well, these are just neurological pathways and they're doing this and they're doing that. But then you can say to it that there's more than that. There is an energy which pertains to this variety of neurological pathway. And when you feed this energy, then it gets stronger and stronger. And then it makes manifest into a talking entity. And it tells you, oi, I want Coke. So when you've got these entities that start vocalizing what their desire is, I just don't think it's neurological pathways anymore. I think it's something bigger and it's something deeper. And it's a possession of a variety of energy, which we know that energy can make manifest into all different sorts of things. And so let's say it's an ethereal manifestation of a variety of spirit. That's what I think it is.
Yeah, in the ethereal realm, yeah. So if you can say that what you're saying there is a case, again, if you focus on a certain aspect, it's going to grow into a force of its own then, isn't it? Which can be like a possessional aspect of your spirit, of your being. We can say that the program that runs within the mind of that person is a possession then, isn't it? It's got to be.
Yeah, I think it is. And if we look at ourselves seriously, and I've spoken about this lots of times, there's not just one entity in this house. In our houses, they invariably are occupied by many. And it depends on how complex your life is, how much experience that you have had in this life. Because as you go through life, you gather experience and you gather habits, you gather entities, you gather mind viruses, you gather varieties of energy which dwell within you. And so when we've got voices inside of our heads telling us to do this and to do that, how can you explain this outside of an entity alongside your own consciousness? Within you, we know, we've spoken about this before, that we've got the left and the right side of the brain, and they can work and think independently. So there's two consciousnesses within your mind, at least. But then when you have other experiences, and for instance, if you had a terrifying experience, you had an out-of-body experience and you was abducted by aliens, and you went into some sort of a dimension where the aliens were doing tests on you and they scared the shit out of you. When you are back in this reality, you're not free of that manifestation, because it's still residing in your brain, and it's residing in your brain in the shape of a fear, an energy which is fear-based. And when you think about that, then you realize that experience again, and then you recreate it in your brain, and so therefore it's still dwelling within you. And so I think that you know, the human consciousness is very like this, and I don't just think it's like as simple as the eye. Look for the eye. I think there is the eye, but also there are many other varieties of entity which try to feed on the human energy. They are taking a ride, just like consciousness is taking a ride. How can we explain consciousness? Consciousness is this speck of eternal being, and it just comes about within our body. Well, who's to say that lots of other entities can't just come about within our body?
What we've got to understand before we jump on to Chris is that we are a product of consciousness. This is where people don't get that bit. We are a product. We're created by consciousness.
Yeah, we are consciousness. That's it. And even everything, every entity that wants to feed on us and all that stuff, it's like, it's consciousness too. It's just, it's playing its game with itself. There's no outside. Inside is outside. There's no other than we. We are creating it. We are it. We are not the human. That's the persona. That's the ego. That's the thing we are identified with. But that's not us. That's just. That's the entity, you could say. We are believing to be, but that's not really. That's the I. We are the I. We are it. We are not the stuff around it. We are all this society and everything around us. See, that's a fucked up thing, because we are all in our heads. We are all thinking we are humans. We have this experience and all that stuff. No, it's just like when you see the world like it is, and you know that too, Paul, with the videos you upload. It's we are it. We are not just. We are just playing a game with ourselves. It's not like we have to figure something out. It's just there's no thing outside of you.
The only thing we've got to figure out is the fact that we've become aware that we've been injected with these programs since the age of, since we were born. We're aware that these programs are running us. Yeah. All three of us are aware of that. So the fact of the matter is, it's a case of what we seem to be going into now is a case of slowly and methodically pulling them out of us, isn't it? That's what we're all trying to do. Do you not think, in our own different times?
Yeah, we're trying to cleanse the mind of viruses and attachments. You see, Freud dealt a great deal with people with like manifestations which came about out of suppression. And so what his patients were doing, he determined, was that when they had suppressed something from their lives and they denied it, that doesn't make the energy go away. That energy is still there. And if it is denied, then that energy makes manifest in another form, because it's energy and it has to express itself. And so all different sorts of idiosyncrasies would come about, and kind of like habits and twitches and this sort of thing. And so
it's like transference to a different part of the spectrum then, isn't it?
Yeah, and so when we look at this, then that there is a entity within the mind, which was, let's say, if your father used to beat you every time he came home drunk, and he beat you black and blue and he broke bones in you, but it's too painful for you to continue with your life, and so therefore you negate it, and you just want to forget about it. You want to move forward, and you want to try and live a life, which isn't based on fear and trauma. But that energy is still within you, and unless you come to terms with it, and unless you go back and visit it, and you bring around this level of forgiveness to dissipate it, then it's going to make manifest in something else, and so it comes out in another energy form. And so then when you've got something that you're doing, it's like some people have nervous coughs, they have twitches and all these different sorts of things. And one person in particular, in the Freudian times, he had this very, very red, shiny nose because he kept polishing it all the time. He was always polishing it. And as to why he was doing this, well, why, would we do anything? It's just the way it manifested in him. And so that energy then was there all along, and it had a certain jurisdiction within the mind. And so the way I look at the human consciousness is that there is this I. And this I is an impartial observer. That is all that it does. It just observes the human experience. But just like, say, like a feral animal, when it's living in the wild, then it's going to be gathering parasites because that's the nature of its domain. And all animals have parasites of some description, whether they're in their intestines, whether they're in their ears or the fur or something like this. And so I think that due to the environment that we're in, when we go through our lives, we too gather parasites, we gather energies which attach on to this thing that we know as consciousness.
Into the ethereal body. It's into the ethereal body, isn't it?
Exactly. And you see, this is what lots of people may not grasp if they are not familiar with the soul body, the astral body, the ethereal body, because there's different varieties of body that we have. When you go into an astral projection, then that's your astral body. And when you have some sort of experience whereby you have a very, very lucid dream or some form of astral experience, but you don't have a body, but you know you are pure consciousness and you know that everything is within one. And so if you've ever had an experience like that, then I would say that then is probably the ethereal being, because it's an energy form, but it doesn't make manifest. It's just there, like consciousness.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. It's just we have all these bodies: emotional body, astral body, etheric body, and all that stuff. But that's again just the game. That's not what you are. That's just the role you play right now. And we are all just one. We are just playing this game right now, and that's it. We are one. We are not different. We are not. It's just consciousness. Consciousness. There's no difference between the object and the subject.
So let me just interject in there. Like you said, we're all one. But we've been given an aspect where we've got a certain amount of free will. This is where it gets very complicated, isn't it?
Yeah. That's with the free will thing. I don't know. We have a certain degree to
percentage.
A certain percentage of free will, you could say. But again, it's like, do we really have that? That's a really philosophical question, because it looks for us like that, but you don't know. From a different higher, let's call it higher perspective, it's obvious to you that you don't have a free will, but it looks for us like that. I don't know. It's just a theory, but I don't know. It's just you can philosophize and research that stuff for your whole life, and you never will get an answer to that, because that's the thing with the scientists too. When they try to find the smallest particle or how big the universe is, no matter where you go, into microcosm or macrocosm, everything is just infinite. A limitation, like fractals, is limited but infinite at the same time. It's a paradox. That's the thing. You can search for that for your whole life, but you never will find the answer, because that's the rule of the game in a way. It's just like it's playing a game with itself, and that's of course you can philosophize about it, but you never will get an answer to that. That's the thing. Even if you think you have an answer, then 10 more questions come. when you have an answer. It's always this, that
Well,
thing.
it's a fractal system then, isn't it? It's got to be a fractal system of unimaginable amounts of options
Yeah.
that can be given when you actually ask the question. So what you can get from that is it's a case of it's almost like how could we we're asking a question, what is this, what are we, and then we know we're a creative process, like you said, Aaron. We're residing in many gods' palaces and things like that. But the thing is with it, it's almost what perfect place to hide it than to be in itself.
Yeah.
It's the most perfect hiding place, isn't it?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. For me at least, it made totally sense that.
What do you reckon?
Well, when you look at these sort of philosophical questions, I mean, philosophy encapsulates everything. But alongside philosophy is a certain reality. And within that reality, there is a psychology. And so we can say that it's all one. And if we say it's all one and there's no difference between anything, then we're at kind of like a philosophical impasse. It's a bit like if we say that we are only the I and everything else is a lie. Well, okay, but where do you go with that? Do you just go and sit under a tree for the rest of your life?
I wouldn't say everything else is a lie. Everything else is you too. That's no difference. That's just this. Even watched a good video about that from Alan Watts 2 days ago. It's like the dangers of awakening. You have to just get used to the polarized. He calls it polarized thinking. That one can't go without the other. That's the thing. In Zen Buddhism, it's like two. Like when Zen master is asked something profound or something deep, he always answers in the mundane and other way around.
We're in the realms of it is and it isn't again, aren't we?
Yeah, there's no other. There's no side outside of you. There's no thing you have to win or you don't. Everything has to be like it is. It's like there's no dark without light and all that stuff. You have to get used, in my opinion, have to get used to polarized thinking. That both the one can't go without the other. Both it's logical and illogical at the same time. That's a paradox. That's what our rational mind, our human mind, doesn't want to understand at the beginning. We are always fighting. No, that can't be, and there's the other, and then it doesn't make sense this way.
So you're saying it's like a cat chasing its tail, then?
Yeah. It's like with the Ouroboros, the dragon always eating itself in a way. It's like you have to see yin and yang. That's the thing. You have to see that one can't go without the other. There is no polarity. There is no good and bad. There is no, and that's the thing. That's the danger. What he calls, and we only have 3 minutes now. Make it quick here. What Alan Watts says so great. That's the danger of when you recognize that. When you see you are it, you created it, you are everything. Then you can very easily slip into madness, he says, because that's why the Buddhists, and especially Zen Buddhists and other religions, and the Hindus and the old Eastern philosophy, all that stuff, have these practices like yoga or Zen or all that stuff to keep your mind at bay in a way, because your mind creating everything. So it's like again, polarization. When you know you're creating everything, you can very easily slip into thinking you are God, and then you're getting such a big ego. Become.
It's like Nietzsche again, isn't it? Saying we keep about this thing, look into the abyss will look back at you, and it's so vast and massive and big that it's almost kind of like you need 1 billion years to even get anywhere with it. So it's almost kind of like a trillion piece puzzle piece. So somebody's saying to you it's going to take you 300 years to do that puzzle. Well, you go, I'm not even going to attempt to do it. But some of the reason is something within certain people that's got this innate challenge to kind of crack the code if it goes that way.
Okay, and so then, if we want to do another one after this one, then we can continue on why people are driven. But I want to get back to a practical way of looking at the mind, because we can say that it's all one, it's all the abyss, and this, that, and the other, but it doesn't get us anywhere from that philosophical perspective. And so, what I want to do is, because people watching my videos, they want help. And you know, if you just blow them off like, oh, it's all one, it's all a dream, it's all an illusion, that's no help. You know, we're actually feeling as if this is the reality, and some of us do get depressed, and we do get anxious, and we do get fear-based, and so.
I sent you new links. Yeah, we can totally talk about that. That's not what I mean with that. When we all want, that's a new age.
You go into these spaces, don't you, Chris? You could probably talk about.
That's why I don't mean it like that.
And I answered the phone to him the other day. I was looking at Chris. What is that, Chris? He was totally his energy gone. He just sat there like that.
That's why. We only have 30 seconds. I sent you both new links, and I can totally talk with you about that. That's not what I mean with we all one. I explain it now in the next video.
See you in a bit.
Okay, bye.